All right, I've already done a lot of the work here, um, but I want to show you what I did. So I started with the original data file. So you see here's original data, recoded data, data plus interactions, the worksheet. I went to the recoded data um, and got the two columns A and B from there, and then these recoded columns of R1 through G that we had, well, R1 through G. Yeah, and then I did F. I called it F, but it's the original 0, 1 failure probability here. So possibly I should have not called it F. Um, Maybe that was a bad thing. I don't know. But when you get here, so here I've got my D, my P, and so forth. Now you'll notice that again I said I did some work already, so the numbers here don't really quite match up the way they look here. You know, there's a 28 and 46. Here's a 28 and a 46. So they've been sorted is what I did. So what I wanted to do was check the patterns. Did I see anything with any of the variables? And what we did with multiple regression and almost all numerical data in the last project, we did have that one two-level categorical, kind of like gender here. So if that's all we had was this gender 0, 1, I'd probably do things like I did in the previous project. But here, we've got multiple categorical data. The response variable is a categorical. And so what I wanted to do was go through and look at all these pairwise comparisons. How does D compare with F? How does P compare with F? And so forth. And so to do that, I needed to, for the strictly categorical data, I needed to look at the contingency tables, right? So here's gender was either 0 or 1, and then the failure was either 0 or 1, and I needed to count those all up. Now here, I didn't put my sum in, I guess because I could add them up in my head pretty well on that one. But what I did for each of these is I summed those, and that was simply to make sure I got them all, or I didn't count things twice or something like that. So I should always have 100 items in here, and I do. And so what did I have to do? Well, every single time I need to highlight everything, and so then I say data and sort. And what I'm going to do is sort. Now, I could use the F because that's one of these, so I could leave it as F. But then the other one I want to do is G. Now, everything else will get sorted, but I'm only interested in those two. And I say OK, but it's very important that I sort everything. Now, here, I just put in numbers so I could better tell what was going on. And so here I've got numbers 1 through 24, and 24 I stopped there because you see those are all the 0 zeros. And so 0, 0, I've got 24. Then I've got 1, 0, and that's G is 1. And so what I did here is I just restarted my numbers, and so you see they restart because that was for something else, but I go down till I'm done with the 1 zeros, and there were 45 of them, and so I put a 45 for the 1 for G, 0 for F. And then similarly here, I started counting again for the 0, 1s. So there's 1, and I start pulling that down. And there were only 5 of those, and there was a 5 up there. And then I started a 1 here. Oops, not all the way there. And there were 26, so 5 and 26 for those others. And there you see the 5 and 26. So I've made that table, and I can kind of look to see, do I feel like something's going on there between gender and the failure? And maybe, you know, I could fill in more here, right? And because I see you've got 69 here and 31. So it's about 2/3 here, 1/3 there. You know, but as I look here, 24 to 5 is not like 2/3 and 1/3, right? 24 and 5, that's 24 is almost 5 times 5, and so you're what is that? That's 6 pieces. So this is the 5 is somewhere around 16%. So half of that 32%. So it looks like there might be something going on here. Now I could always put this these 4 numbers into my chi-square test of independence template, get a p-value for those, but I don't have to. I mean, you know, that's I don't have to do that. You know, mostly I just want to kind of see the numbers like you would plot data. Well, here I can't plot 2 categorical variables, so I look at them in a table. And similarly, you know, I can do the R's. So I looked at the different R's, and that it gets a little strange when you're doing the dummy variables of more than 2 levels. So I want to do F and R. So I go to my data and I say sort. F, I still need to sort by F. Now I might do that last, I might do it first. You know, I can decide whatever is easiest. If I try it one way and it seems hard, I could try it the other way. But now I'll sort by R1, then R2, then R3. And so I sort by all of those. Now they're going in ascending order. I could do them in descending order because the, you know, it's R1. If I get a 1, you know, you just have to count them all. I mean, you just have to be very careful and count them all. So I say okay. And now, you know, what I can do is, so I'm looking at this top part actually. So I, you know, it's probably best to highlight. And what I want to do is go until, you know, something changes, and notice, you know, everything's zeros. I'm looking at the first 3 columns of zeros and then the last column with F in it. And just so I can see where I'm going, right? This, oops, okay, so there we go. That is the last place that I get 0, 0, 0, and a 0 here. And so now I could mark that, you know, I could click here and mark it with like a yellow background, you know, so like if I click there and I go yellow, now I know where to stop, right? Because I have to count all these. And I'm just going to start here, and, you know, it's going to go, but I stop there. And I could do these all at once. Notice when I filled in, it made that yellow disappear. But I could put all those yellows in to tell me where to stop all at once. But that's 58. Now, what was that? Well, that was all 3 zeros, so that was actually R4 and F. so R4 and F, so F, R4, 58. So you see I got 58, wherever that 58 was. Okay, so that was R4. And now notice that there's only one of these, right, 001, and that's R3. So there's only one of those. And then I would start over at 1 again to do the R2s. And I think I got that lined up right with 8 of them. And then there are 1, 2 of those. So R3 was just 1, R2 was 8, and R1 was 2. So 3 was 1, 2 was 8, 1 was 2, right? So I filled all those in, and then I need to do the same thing for the bottom row. Now, where you have to be careful is, notice that like here, there weren't any. That's okay. There weren't any, and so you have to, have that in there. But notice that still added up to 100 and so forth for the C's. Now, where it actually really matters that there weren't any. So you see, I did this for F, C, G, R, G and C. Now I did R and C. Now to do R and C, and to tell you the truth, I don't remember. I think I was just playing around with something here. That's that one. Yeah. So I'm going to get rid of those. I was just playing with that. But okay, so to do the R1 or the R and the C, that actually takes quite a bit of sorting. So again, you have to sort everything. And I go here and I sort. And so I'll start first by maybe R1, R2, R3. And again, I could either do ascending or descending. The important part is I count it all right. Then C1, then C2. And mine keeps allowing this. I could, if I had to, I could always, in some of these spreadsheets, you say add one, and C3. So I sort by all of those, and I say OK. And this gets a little tough to really count, but what I do is, here are all the 0 zeros. So that's R4, C4. And I'm coming down, and it stops there at all of them being 0. And so that looks like 41, and hopefully I have 41 there for C4, R4, because that's all the zeros. So I got 41 of them. And this then is starting here. That is, again, R4, because these are all zeros, but it's C3 because the ones are there in the C3 column. And so I count those, and there are 6, which is what I have here, R4 and 6. Now, when I did this, I got zeros there and 0 here. Now, these zeros are very important because when we go back here to the worksheet, remember this thing didn't work, right? It's got all that. The reason it's got all that is that R1C2 is 0, and R2C3 and R3C3 are zeros. Everything's 0. There aren't any. And so I get 3 columns of zeros here. And I need to just, those are the first things I need to get rid of. Okay, so I can't see p-values or anything, but we just know that if you have a column of all zeros, that's no good. That's not gonna, it doesn't tell you anything in the regression, right? And the technology is choking on it. And so R1C2, I go back here, I find R1C2, that's column 26. I delete that column. I'm not going to fix my numbers on the regression yet, but then R2C3 and R3C3. R2C3 and R3C3. Now, hopefully what we see when I do this R3C3 is all of a sudden numbers will show up in there. And look at that. There they go. And so this is where you actually want to start with. And so you want to go through and get your columns taken care of, right? We missed 26. So 26 isn't there anymore. So, well, one thing I could do is I could just backspace over that 26. What else wasn't there? 35 and 31 were not there. So 35 and 31. And so these need to go next to that. These need to go here. And these all need to get scooted over. But hopefully when I do this, everything lines up beautifully and we've got our starting point. Now I could have done this for you, but I think it's important for you to have to go through that and do it. Now, this still doesn't work. I think it will. If not, we'll just have to go from there. But I think this will end up working sooner or later here. I think the problem is that the predicted thing is trying to work with values over here and so forth that don't make any sense in the formula. I think that's what's going on. I'm not sure about that, but like I say, we'll have to get back to that. So that is making the tables. So here, you know, this is how I made those tables. It takes a little while. It gets you know, it's a bit of a pain, but you know, that I can, you know, I think it's a good thing to have to do that kind of stuff every once in a while. So that makes the tables. And then the other thing we have to do is check numerical data against these various categorical data. And so again, what I would do is I would tend to sort things. Currently, I think the last thing I did, yeah, I've got this sorted already by R1, R2, and R3. And so you see, I can create columns of data, you know, ready to go put into a box plot, for instance. So what I could do is, you know, I could come over here and do the D's that now this isn't true interaction. I'm just sorting data, but I'll put a DR1, DR2, and a DR3. Okay, and the columns are a little wide right now for all that, but you know what I can do is highlight here, go down until I get to the, oh, and I forgot my R4 because that's the first thing I've got here actually. So all zeros again. I'll do a copy. And those go in R4 because that was all zeros. So I need an R4, DR4. And I'll paste those there. And again, I could, sort of narrow all this down with column width. Make that maybe 0.5. I could center everything so I can read it a little better. There are my R4s. Go down here, find my R3s, not too many of them. So I have that. Do a Control-C to copy. Come back up here. I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller so I can see everything. So there's D3. Come back down. D4 starts there and goes to there. And so I copy that. Control-V for paste. And finally the R1s. So again, you need to remember that all zeros is R4. Whoops, don't want to highlight that. I want to highlight that. So now I can take these data and put them in my box plot maker that we have on the web. So I can do that. I can do the same thing with the P's in R1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I would resort everything by C1, C2, C3 and make my columns that way. I would resort everything by G or F, and make columns for those. So I need, box plots for all those, and so that I can kind of look to see, does it look like anything's going on? Do things look dependent? Do they look independent? And so forth. So, I didn't do a p-value, but it looks to me like probably gender and this failure status is possibly dependent. Again here, I look at, well, these numbers aren't vastly different, and this one's way bigger than that one. So, it looks like the race is doing something here. It looks like there's a dependency there. Here, not so clear on cause. Maybe, let's see. Because it's kind of hard to say on cause. I'm not sure. And again, you can always run a p-value thing, do a chi-square test of independence on any one of these if you want to explore that, and you just report it. It's not in your final model usually, but you can just point that out that, hey, if you just look at this, there appears to be a dependency, or there appears to not be. They appear independent. Same with this. I can do my box plots, and if I think there's something very interesting in the box plots, I could always run them through an ANOVA and get a p-value for that. But in the end, right, we're going to do this giant regression here and just start eliminating things and try to get those down to 11 columns. Okay, so that's making tables and making columns, and so we'll call that video done.